So as we were laying down all the basic tracks, I just stood in the studio with headphones on, and man, was it loud! We had the guitar amp screaming loud, but that's the tone we were looking for, and it amazed me because on the F2 album, I wound up double tracking all the guitar tracks to get them really heavy and chunky. On Fallen to Grace, we got such a fantastic heavy sound that I didn't have to go back and do that, and I was thrilled beyond belief with Zach's work in creating the guitar tone. The cool thing was, once we finished all the rhythm tracks, I took the files home onto my home Pro Tools system, and I was able to record all the clean tones like the intro for A Long Way Home, and a lot of acoustic stuff that's actually buried under Crimson, and all little miscellaneous guitar stuff under no pressure and at my own leisure, so that was really nice. So once we finished laying down all the basic tracks at Zach's studio, which is drums, bass, and rhythm guitars, we took the Pro Tool files home with us, and we set up a little space in where we normally rehearse, which is my mom's basement, but we moved out all the drums and the amps and all that stuff, and we made a little makeshift vocal booth and recording studio. I brought my computer over, set up a nice table, and it was a really, really comfortable recording area for Paul. There was no studio time limits or anything like that. I think we recorded vocals maybe 3 or 4 times a week and kept a nice consistent pace, and all very, very happy with it. The great thing about Pro Tools is that all the stuff that we had laid down in Zach's studio, we were able to take those files and then take them home and work in our home studio.
Stars tonight seem so close and yet so far away.
Looking back on it now, it's not a question of where we were recording, although as wonderful it was working with Zach and comfortable there. But a lot of times it's a question of time is money and having to try to get as much done as we could in a short amount of time. There was a lot of stuff to set up and a lot to get done. And, as far as doing vocals go, if you've got to wait a long period of time before you can finally get to what you got to do, there's a certain feeling and emotion that just gets kind of lost at times. Other times, there's no room for not being on that day. Things got to get done. So, sometimes you're on fire and maybe other times you might not be. Also, how much can you do in a single night? There were times where you need to get a certain amount of songs done in a certain amount of time, whether you were on top of your game or not, Having the ability to do it in a more relaxed environment, especially a place where we had wrote and rehearsed much of the album, just afforded a different kind of feeling. It was comfortable in the sense that you never had to worry about what had to get done. It was much more like you just went and did it.
Whole thing, all over, all wrong.
Wrong, wrong, wrong.
If you weren't on fire at that moment, that we could do it again, that there wasn't the pressures of this has got to get done right now. And a funny thing comes with that, which is kind of neat, is that never happened. It's such a mental state so much. If you go in thinking like I've got to get all this done and everybody's dependent on me, it puts pressure on you. When you don't have that, it's amazing, but you never seem to need it. Everything gets done smoothly, and that comes with being comfortable.
Somewhere just out of reach.
You can look back and say, wow, I wish I had more time to do some things different on F2. I was happy with this, but could it be better? It's always the main question is, when are you at your best? There's times where maybe Tony can remind me or tell me that, it's not as on fire as, say, it was when we were rehearsing it or writing it. And then you really got to look back at it and you say, like, can I do this better? Looking at what the album was all about, being comfortable and trying to capture as much emotion as being delivered in the lyrics. It was really important. And having the time and the freedom and the space to make sure that that's captured. I mean, you have to look at the other guys in the band when they're listening, saying, "Did I get it? I think I got it," and having just the time and the being in a comfortable atmosphere to just be able to focus on the material itself that was written there and make sure you're delivering it as best as you can, from the soul.
When it came time to mix Fall into Grace, I knew it was going to be a very daunting task ahead of us, and I was a little worried about the amount of hours needed to mix this in the late nights in the studio. But in the end, Zach did such a phenomenal job with mixing it, and was very patient with us in obtaining our sound and what our final vision of the final end result of this album was going to sound. Working with Pro Tools is an absolute dream. If you ever worked with a tape-based system, basically when you start a mix, you have to finish the mix, because if you come back the next day, or if there's days in between where you have to break down the board and everything, the mix is gone. Or you could do a recall on some systems, but with Pro Tools, it's total recall. You just hit the save button and boom, you come back in a week later and it's the same exact mix. And that made such a huge difference in mixing this album. And we were able to keep a consistent sound across all the songs. And even with the earlier batch that was recorded, it's almost impossible to tell now which were recorded at point A and which were recorded at point B.
I mean, as a whole, in terms of time and that it took to do it, writing, rehearsing, I would say that this experience was by far the closest thing to what I ever dreamed of what it would be like for us to make our best project. By far, it was a much more comfortable experience than any of the last two albums before it.
When all is said and done, we put 2.5, 3 years of really hard work into making this album, but it shows. This is by far the best album Eye of the Storm has ever made, and it's the album we've been waiting to make for years and years. So I am so extremely proud of Fall into Grace. It's the best thing that we have ever done.
The overall sound of the album is just real in your face. The guitar tones and the bass tones and Paul and everybody, the drums, everything just sounds like a different phase of Eye of the Storm.
I think this time around we finally achieved what we always set out to, was to have a product of, ultra high quality that best represents the true sound and the abilities that the band and its members possess. Because in the past we've always had a mishmash of conglomerated songs, and this was an album that was done from start to finish. It was written as a whole. It tells a story, it has a theme, it's all related to one another, but no two songs sound alike. It has a lot of passion, a lot of energy in it, and it was just nice to finally have a product that will represent really best what the band sounds like.